On this week's episode, we are interviewing Lisa Intagliata, and she's actually a CFRE. How about that from a fundraising perspective? Actually, Lisa is the CEO of Resilient Retreat. She's got a very successful career in fundraising before she became CEO and actually continues in that role, as you will hear from her. And she sat on any number of boards. She's been involved in so much in our community. I think you'll enjoy this from a perspective of what's the role fund development plays in an organization at the senior levels. So please enjoy this interview of Lisa. Hey, did you know that we have a YouTube channel with all these podcasts and video? You get to see what's going on, what we look like when we're doing these podcasts. So if you'd like to go take a look, it's youtube.com/@thecorley-company. We'll see you there. Lisa, please tell the audience a little bit about yourself and how you became CEO of Resilient Retreat here in Sarasota.
Sure. Well, thank you so much, Michael, for the opportunity to be on your podcast. I've been following it for quite a while, and certainly has been a wonderful tool to send out to my board members and others for continuing education. So thank you. So my career started off, again, I went to college for mass communications and public relations, had no idea back in the early 90s what fundraising was when I was, looking at my major, and fell into it like many people. So I was very certain I wanted a career in hospitality when I graduated, and I was going to be Julie McCoy on the cruise ships, but quickly found out that since I was not bilingual, that was not a career that was destined for me. So I actually had applied to my alma mater in a development alumni relations, very junior role, and worked at Carter Mooney High School and got my teeth wet there, and had a wonderful mentor in their director of development at the time, who was a very seasoned fundraising professional. She took me under her wing. She said, joined, at that time it was National Society of Fundraising Executives. I'm dating myself. Now it's Association of Fundraising Professionals. She said, get involved, join committees, learn all you can. She was very supportive of continuing education. So I did. I got uber involved, learned, went to so many seminars, and then you just learn by doing. So I was very much, a one cook shop there where you were doing a little bit of everything. But it was a great experience because for those 7 years, I was doing everything from annual fund to a capital campaign to special events to writing the newsletter to working with volunteers. And then went from there to Ringling Museum. And then my longest stint in fundraising was for Sarasota Memorial Healthcare Foundation, where I did 15 years, loved working for the hospital, believe in everything SMH represents, and was doing fundraising in different capacities there, and then went to work for Ringling College, and then was lured away. I was not looking to leave the college, but a wonderful friend and colleague, and she does a bit of headhunting in the nonprofit sector, called and said, you have to meet Dr. Sydney Turner and go to lunch. I know your professional goal and personal goal has been maybe to be an executive director one day. So I went to lunch with Sydney, and again, no intention of leaving my current position, and just heard about the mission, and Sydney's passion was contagious. And I really was also really driven by the fact that this could be totally a startup, and I could build everything from the ground up alongside her and really help her realize the vision along with the founding board members, and took that leap of faith and was so happy I did. But a kind of a funny story is I took the job in February of 2020, and then literally 3 weeks later, everything shut down with COVID. So quick pivot to learn how to do everything online.
Oh my gosh, I didn't realize that's when you started over there. Oh my, that's a podcast for another day, isn't it? All those learnings. Oh, God bless you. Okay, so you have continued to have a very successful career in fundraising, fund development. How did that prepare you to be a CEO?
Well, I think I'm I am unique in that so many CEOs don't come from a fundraising background, aren't necessarily comfortable with fundraising or asking people for money or really doing some deep dive relationship building. So I think that was really a plus for me, as that's just been my natural passion and trajectory in my career. So I think 50% or more of what I do still is fundraising. It's relationship building. It's connecting, needs in our community with mental health and with donor interest and passion, and building those relationships, and with foundations, with corporations, with individuals, with volunteers, and getting the right people engaged with the organization. Working with boards was not foreign to me. So I think it definitely was a great training ground for being CEO. However, there was a lot I needed to learn in other areas, with regard to, deep dive in human resources and, other elements on the program side of things. But one really nice thing is the founding board really did a lot of investment in education. So I became certified as a trauma professional, learning the program side of the house, and really expanded, my knowledge base in that side of the mission work we're doing.
And in reality, as CEO of nonprofit, you are always fundraising in some form, fashion, or another. Are you not? Yes, you've got HR issues and things like that. But the big picture, and I think people who come from outside the industry don't understand that you're always raising funds.
You're always raising funds. We are always, thinking about, what do we need to message to the community, internally and externally? What do we have as far as relationships in our, a pipeline, if you will, as far as, annual donors that maybe we need to tell some different stories to, regarding our needs, engaging them further with the organization. What are the relationships we need to build in the community with our local and regional foundations? Are they aware of our mission work and how we might be able to join forces and work on initiatives together? And so you're always anticipating, you're always planning. We definitely have a development plan and look at that and our cash flow projections monthly. And then, we're looking at the development plan for next year, and we're looking at the strategic plan, and that those two marry along with your budget planning. And we do that, every year. Strategic planning is once every 3 years. But yeah, it's just always constant. And the need is always there, and it's usually always growing based on demand for your services. And what we do at Resilient Retreat, we provide free services to the public, and that comes with a cost. Just because they're free doesn't mean that they don't come with a cost to the agency. So we're always looking at new and innovative ways to bring resources in. And also, fundraising also with a little different perspective. We have a unique position at Resilient Retreat where we have 84 acres of conserved land. And when our facilities and our outdoor facilities as well are not utilized by our participant programs, we can rent it out. So we joined forces with the Patterson Foundation and their excellent Margin Mission Ignition initiative, and built out a business plan and fundraised as part of that the seed money needed to launch that endeavor, and hire an event sales manager full time and get that up and running, and all the things you need to build a new business. But that was a whole new business venture for us, and we learned a lot along the way there. But that's up and running and is gaining traction, and it's a great pipeline for revenue, diversified revenue for the nonprofit.
Which as CEO, you're really responsible for ensuring, with the board, which we're going to talk about in a minute, ensuring the financial viability of the organization. So while you have that, fundraising background, this is now you're running a business with Retreat Sarasota.
Yes, exactly. So, the board actually came to me and said, "Do you realize you're reporting to two boards and that you're actually running two businesses? And, is this really what you had in mind?" And I'm like, "Hey, we're doing it, and this is the right time and the right place to do it." it. So, but we learned a lot too. We learned also that we actually originally we had set up a separate C corporation for the Retreat Sarasota business. Now we merged it in with Resilient Retreat. So there aren't two boards. There's just an advisory committee. So we're learning all the time and tweaking and becoming more efficient for sure.
Well, you're really doing remarkable work over there. So let me ask you this. I work with a lot of boards, and a lot of board members come from the private sector, and God bless them for serving. What do board members need to understand about fundraising and fund development?
Well, I think the major thing is that it's a group sport, that just because you have a development committee or a fundraising committee or a staff, that doesn't mean that's just their job and it's not your responsibility as a board member. And I think board members who understand that, and I think it's my job and our staff to educate board members, one, before they even sign on the dotted line to become a board member, to make sure there's clear expectations of their role, of their responsibilities, make sure there's proper orientation, make sure there's proper continuing education always. And we talk about fundraising, we talk about what it is and maybe what it isn't, and try to alleviate a lot of fears. And we do a lot of continuing education with board, just to always talk about new and innovative ways that they can engage in fundraising that doesn't always and usually doesn't involve a direct face-to-face solicitation where they're not supported. And a lot of times it's being door openers and introducing people to the organization, looking out for people they can engage as maybe that's going to be a great potential board member for Resilient Retreat or your organization later down the line. How can I engage them on a committee maybe first, or talk to staff about that? We also had a lot of success early on because nobody knew who Resilient Retreat was 7 years ago. We're a new nonprofit. So just board members who would say, I invite someone out to tour or do a hard hat tour of our property when we were in our capital campaign, or doing a small gathering in their home and introducing their neighbors and their friends who didn't know about us to our mission. Those grassroots efforts really, really help. And board members, those are easy things I think board members can do.
And the board can play a significant role in helping the CEO to connect some dots, open some doors, which ultimately leads to some fundraising activity or any other support for the organization. So board members really need to understand that that's a critical role they can play.
Absolutely. And something we started this last year, and our board chair was fully supportive of it, was to create board engagement plans for each individual board member. And and we worked with staff on kind of carving out what does that mean. And we had a template that they followed, and it allowed a lot of conversation back and forth. Again, a lot of, I think, allaying of some fears that they had, at least discussions about those fears and overcoming them. And then things were like, oh, I didn't realize that by, doing a house party or having you come to my Kiwanis Club all meant that I'm doing my job as a board member. So it really was very valuable, and we're, really working with them one-on-one now to execute those plans.
Oh, very good. I love that, being very prescriptive on what's expected. Help board members be successful, because a lot of them have no idea. And it's just because they haven't been in this space before. So bring them along.
And I'm also a big fan of the Gulf Coast Community Foundation's Board Institute. And we really prescribe that for a lot of our board members when, at least if not the first year, the second year, to go through that program.
Yeah, I've been through that back when I was serving on board. It's great. It's a very strong program. So let me ask you, you came in, the inaugural CEO, I guess maybe Sydney had that title. I don't know, but the founder. So you're your startup, ground zero. How did you structure? You started hiring people. How have you organizationally structured Resilient Retreat?
So really looking at, the development department, which, again, we're a small organization. We're 9 staff right now. We're about to hire our 10th person, and that 10th person is a Director of Leadership Giving, so it's in the development arena. But really looking at what did we need as far as from a program perspective to make sure we're executing our mission appropriately, that we have staff on hand to, deliver our programs and our services, to man our kind line for mental health support, to do things like execute our overnight retreats. And then also, by the way, we have this 84-acre property, so we needed a full-time campus superintendent to live on the property. So that we have that 24/7, care and upkeep of the property, and then have the right people to help with communications, marketing, and the key position too, I think, was hiring a really amazing operations director, our COO, who came from a multi-facility nonprofit and really had wherewithal about expertise in human resources and facility management and finances, and that was such a pivotal role for us. And that was actually the first hire before the board had hired the CEO. And that she actually helped hire me. I was on the search committee. So that was an interesting way to work it, but definitely worked.
And you've said a few times, you've mentioned mission. How do you keep everybody focused on mission?
Well, I think number one is to have a clear strategic plan and make sure that the board and the staff have all been involved with that process, so that you haven't created that in a vacuum. And make sure you don't just create the strategic plan, but we have been very intentional from the get-go about making sure it's reported on at all of our board meetings, both in my board report and discussion. Also, we have quarterly board and staff. We just started that quarterly board and staff retreats, mini retreats, and we talk about strategic plan initiatives with them and with the staff, and where are we to goal, and we don't want it just to be a document that sits on a shelf. So I think strategic plan for sure. I think we also really feel like it's so important that every board meeting we share either one or two mission moments with the board, and bringing them, to retreats and just to talk about what the participants are saying and how we're moving the needle with mental health in our community. So I think the mission moments are also really, really key. And then again, I think just making sure that you're involving board in mission, having mission moments at your special events, and making sure that you don't just have an event to have an event, but that they're walking away knowing why they were there, and it wasn't just a chicken dinner or a really nice, evening out or a nice gala with dancing, but they understood why they were in the seats and what their money went for. And that's hard to do. It's hard to strike that balance and still produce an exciting and compelling event.
Oh, it really is. But you're good at it. And that's based on all of your experience, I'm sure. So you've been CEO for a little over 5 years now. What has surprised you the most about serving in this role?
I think that things don't happen overnight, and sometimes I get overeager, especially starting out. That it takes time to build a nonprofit, to build a donor base of support, to build a strong board, an educated board. That you need time to build a volunteer corps, and you just don't get ahead of yourself, I think, is probably what I've learned the most in trying to take that time and realize that, it's going to take time, but it will happen. And what's really nice, I know, even though we're only 7 years old, it's really nice to stop and reflect. And I think we don't do that often enough in nonprofit, because you're always on to the next thing, is to stop and smell the roses. So we're trying to really be intentional as a staff to take time to do that at staff meetings and at board meetings, to say, hey, let's take a look in the rearview mirror and see how far we've come, or, even if it's just last month or last week or last year, just to really always keep that in mind to keep you going forward.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense. It's always good to do that. Hard to do because we don't take the time to do it at all. So if somebody else is contemplating becoming an executive director, maybe it's an aspiring, scrappy fund development person like yourself, what advice would you give him or her?
I think, to be resilient, honestly, and don't give up your dream. Don't give up that maybe fire in your belly to want to change the world. And I think if something tells you you think you'd be a good leader, I think you should follow that. And I think always be humble and be authentic. Don't change who you are, what you believe in to mold to a position. I think, be very careful about who you go to work for and that you can really be passionate about the mission. If you don't have that at your core, nothing's going to work, in my opinion. So I think those would probably be some words of advice, and I think that the rest will follow.
Great words of advice from Lisa Intagliata. Lisa, you're doing so much in our community, and it's greatly appreciated. Thank you so much for coming on today's podcast and sharing your experience and wisdom with us. It is much appreciated.
Thank you, Michael. Appreciate it.
All right, here it is, Recapping with Reed. Reed, great conversation with Lisa. She's so knowledgeable. What were your three takeaways?
One thing that board members need to understand about fundraising is that it is a team sport. It is not only one person's role to fundraise, and it might not be your role as a board member to ask people for money, but you might be a door opener. There is a role for you to play in fundraising.
And she explained how easy it can be as a board member. So yeah, that was really good, Reed. What about number two?
When it comes to keeping everyone focused on the mission, it's helpful to have a very clear strategic plan and make sure that the board and staff were involved in that process, plus report on that strategic plan constantly and share mission moments at board meetings.
And number three?
Something we've heard from several CEOs recently, advice, and this was her advice for future executive directors, was just be authentic. We've heard several CEOs talking about how they felt like they had to fit a mold or be somebody else when they got this role as the leader. But it's just nice to keep hearing people say, be yourself. That's the reason you were hired for this role.
And I think what's interesting, it takes a while to be yourself. I mean, we've gotten promoted in these roles. We think there are certain expectations. We're trying to emulate somebody we respected, but it really does. It's fascinating. I think it's almost impossible to be yourself immediately, which sounds kind of weird. But anyway, that's my observation. There you go, ladies and gentlemen, recapping with Reed, his top three observations from our interview with Lisa Intagliata. And you know it, we will I-501 see you next week.